Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us for another segment. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Peter Rhode. He's joining us here from HCW Biologics to discuss inflammaging. It's a state of being in constant chronic inflammation. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Dr. Rhode.
Thank you for having me, Neil. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a look into your area of expertise, and then talk briefly about your role at HCW Biologics.
Okay, so my background is in immunology and in developing therapies that allow the immune system to more effectively fight diseases. I got my Ph.D. training at University of Wisconsin, and then I did a postdoc at Caltech, and have been working in the area of developing immunotherapeutic products for about 30 years in a number of different biotechnology companies. I'm really motivated by taking an idea and then developing it into a product and then seeing how that improves the health of patients. And in some cases, we see this even in early phase clinical testing. At HCW Biologics, I'm the Chief Scientific Officer and the VP of Clinical Operations.
Well, I mentioned that we were going to discuss inflammaging. I said that it was a state of chronic inflammation in a person. Expound on that, if you would. What exactly is inflammaging?
Well, as you said, it's a state of having chronic low-grade inflammation, and it occurs as people get older. So there's a couple of primary processes that happen that triggers this, and the first is the accumulation of a type of cell in your tissue called senescent cells. So these normally respond to damage and stress and help your tissues to heal. But as they accumulate over time, as you age, they generate this chronic low-grade inflammatory environment that's really caused by the secretion of pro-inflammatory proteins called SASP factors. The other process that occurs is the presence of persistent activation of molecules that are called inflammasomes. These are complexes that are in your immune cells and normally help to fight against infections. But again, as these cells get overstimulated, the action of these inflammasomes result in tissue damage and continued inflammation. So we really believe that this age-related inflammaging is a significant contributor to several different types of chronic diseases such as cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, and autoimmune diseases. And really our focus is trying to disrupt these two inflammatory processes to alleviate the symptoms of these age-related diseases and help to improve the health span of the aging population of patients.
Now, I understand that HCW has a couple of lead compounds that are used for, as you say, disrupting this link between this chronic low-grade inflammation and some of these other age-related diseases. What are these two or these lead compounds? I know you have more than one, but a couple of the lead ones.
Yeah, so we've been developing injectable immunotherapeutics. In the case of most of our products, they're injected under the skin to address these inflammaging processes. We basically have invented over 30 different molecules using our proprietary discovery platform that we call TOBI, and that stands for tissue factor-based fusions. And we're using this technology to design and produce these protein therapeutics where we can select active domains from antibodies, growth factors, receptors, or immune-stimulating factors called cytokines, and then use these to make these therapeutics that turn on, turn off, or target the immune system to effectively treat these diseases. So of the 30 design molecules, we've identified two lead molecules. The first we call HCW 9218, which is a bifunctional protein that reduces the accumulation of these activity of these senescent cells. That is going to start an initial clinical trial in patients that have chemotherapy-resistant pancreatic cancer. The second product that we're developing, which is at a somewhat earlier stage, is HCW 9302, and this molecule stimulates immune cells called regulatory T cells that are then able to neutralize the activity of those inflammasome-bearing cells. So again, we're taking two different approaches to address these two different inflammaging-related processes.
These are being addressed by each of these compounds separately. Is the goal, or is there an instance where you're going to use them in conjunction with each other?
I think the long-term goal is to see how they work in combination, because they are two distinct processes, and obviously in some indications both the processes are involved. But we're first get into clinical development of each of them separately and actually look at somewhat separate indications initially. So 9218 primarily is a bifunctional molecule where we have one activity, one part of it that is able to inhibit the activity of a protein called TGF-beta that's produced by these senescent cells and actually inhibits immune responses in the tumor. The other part of the HCW 9218 is a protein called IL-15, and that's able to stimulate immune cells, particularly natural killer cells or NK cells, that then can eliminate the senescent cells. And those two domains work together to stimulate the immune system to reduce accumulation of those senescent cells. And we're particularly interested in using that for senescent cells that occur in tumors following treatment with chemotherapy, and have a recent publication on that, and then an additional publication that we're about to submit if there's interest in understanding the activity of 9218. So that's starting in a cancer trial initially, and then as we understand the activity, the safety profile of that drug, we'll get into the other age-related indications.
Well, I appreciate you joining us here on Health Professional Radio this evening. Is there anything that you'd like to add briefly before we get a website where we can learn more about HCW?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that HCW is set up to pursue the discovery and development of these anti-inflammaging immunotherapies. Cancer, of course, is one of these age-related diseases, and we actually have extensive experience in this field. So we're starting with cancer as the lead indication, and then again, once we understand the activity of our drugs in that indication, it'll serve as a stepping stone for rapid clinical development of other age-related indications. So in a sense, HCW is more than a cancer-focused company. We feel we're one of the leading companies in developing these anti-inflammaging based immunotherapeutics that will potentially be able to treat a wide variety of age-related diseases.
Dr. Rhode, give us a website where we can learn more.
Yeah, the company's website is HCWBiologics.com, and there's additional information there on our lead molecules as well as our publications.
Thank you so much for your time, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Dr. Peter Rhode, Chief Scientific Officer and Vice President of Clinical Operations at HCW Biologics. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.